How about a good old-fashioned G5 versus Power 4 for the CFP Eliminator that we have here on College Football Red Zone? And we got one of those games here in week number 3 as Old Dominion does make the trip within its own state of Virginia in order to take the Virginia Tech Hokies, who are still searching for their very first win of the season after already accepting 2 losses in SEC against SEC opponents. And this is a game that you can see at 7 p.m. Eastern over on ACC Network. And although the team that Virginia Tech is going to be going up against is arguably the weakest team on their schedule thus far, South Carolina and Vanderbilt both being considered superior teams, that doesn't mean that this is automatically going to be a rollover. I mean, this Old Dominion team, just look at the kind of momentum that they're rolling it with within the confines of their season, really laying waste to North Carolina Central, for example, able to amass over 550 yards offensively. Then that includes almost 270 rushing yards. They had 8 yards per carry. That is essentially a first down every time they ran the ball on the ground. That is superb. 8 yards per pass would be a pretty solid day as well. And they're certainly led by a very good quarterback, an underrated quarterback, I want to say, within the confines of the G5, in Colton Joseph, who's once again going to lead them away. And the Monarchs are getting better defensively as well. They allowed just over 100 passing yards in their victory against North Carolina Central last week. You even look at their only loss that they have on their schedule right now in the Indiana game. But even the Indiana game, Old Dominion was far more competitive than what was initially expected. I mean, especially in the red zone. I really liked how Old Dominion was really giving Indiana fits in the red zone, forcing them to either settle for field goals or they would go for it on 4th and short and they wouldn't get it on 4th down. So this is a team that definitely plays really hard, and they're showing why there were some people out there that had them tabbed as a Sun Belt dark horse going into this season and really living up to those expectations thus far. But really taking on a team in Virginia Tech who doesn't have that same momentum. In fact, there's a lot of competitive pressure at Virginia Tech to not only win this game, but they need to look sharp in this matchup as well. They've been blown out last week by Vanderbilt. They had a closer loss to South Carolina as well, and this is also a team that really has struggled, particularly with the quarterback play. Kyron Drones, he's a multi-year starter, so you would have assumed by now that this offense would have maybe taken another step forward, but that simply hasn't happened under Brent Pry. That simply hasn't happened under Kyron Drones as the starting quarterback, which really leads to, what's the future going to look like for both of those guys, for both the head coach and quarterback at the same time. So, all that said, let's check out the model. I've talked a lot of good talk about Old Dominion. Don't really have a lot of really good things to say about Virginia Tech right now, but even with all that said, FanDuel and Redzone, they both agree that Virginia Tech should be favored. But it is just a one-score favorite right now. And that part does make sense, even though Old Dominion is a G5 program, Virginia Tech playing in the ACC. Because you even think about historically what Old Dominion has done to Virginia Tech in recent years. Old Dominion, it seems like regardless of how good the Virginia Tech Hokies football team is, and regardless of how good the Old Dominion football team is, more often than not, we do see this Old Dominion team giving Virginia Tech a tougher time than expected. And thinking about the 2025 iteration of this matchup, I think this game is, again, would not be shocking at all if this does end up being a 4-quarter dogfight. This is a very important game for Virginia Tech, obviously. Not just for just trying to keep any hope of a CFP appearance alive, if you're even worried about that at this point, but if you're Brent Pry, this is a must-win game. That seat is really starting to get warm out there in Blacksburg, Virginia. And if you're coming off of a blowout loss of Vanderbilt, coming off of a lethargic loss to South Carolina, where you're able to move the ball, but you're not able to finish drives, or you turn the ball over. Just mistake after mistake after mistake. And then you combine all that with another loss, this time being to a group of five program in Old Dominion, it's going to be a lot of hard conversations in Blacksburg, Virginia if they can't pull this off. So there's competitive pressure, and I would argue as a program, there's got to be a sense of urgency in this matchup. It's got to show this Saturday night under the lights. So all that being said, sense of urgency, and it's an incredible home field advantage, which makes me sick to my stomach that this team is, not even close to being an elite or even a very good program right now. Because when Virginia Tech is at least very good, college football is better for it, because that is one of the underrated home field advantages in all college football. Love the Sandman introduction before every home game as well. So thanks for that home field advantage. I think thanks to hopefully a sense of urgency that we see as well. I don't think the Hokies cover. I don't think that. I think that this is going to be a closer game than what the betting markets are expecting. But I do think that Virginia Tech does come out on top 28-24. But guys, don't be surprised at all if this ends up being a much closer game than originally anticipated.